Did you know there's what some people call a crisis at the southern border of the United States? Yeah, you never hear anything about it. Before you leave your comment, stop typing. I'm being sarcastic. It's everywhere. Twitter, the news, yoga instructors will tell you about it. Over the years in the United States, immigration, both legal and illegal, has been a hot political topic, with a majority of U.S. residents always being dissatisfied with the current immigration policies. Since the 1980s, between 45 and 72% have said that they are dissatisfied with immigration policies, with no more than 41% ever saying that they are satisfied with the border and immigration laws. There's also in between 10 and 20%, depending on the year, that say they're neutral on the subject. Myself, I'm back and forth on the issue. Obviously, do it the legal way, go through the process, get all your paperwork done. As we all know, that always can't be achieved, and sometimes you need asylum because, let's say, your government wants to kill you for tweeting the Nicaraguan president hates Taylor Swift and the NFL. Come on in. You have a drywall job starting Tuesday? Get back in line, do your paperwork, and wait. Obviously, sneaking across the border isn't ideal, and it creates a lot of problems. In the fiscal year of 2022, there were 2,214,000 alien apprehensions and expulsions registered by the United States Border Patrol, a significant increase from the previous fiscal year where they had 1,662,000. Today we're looking at the 10 countries of origin that had the most encounters with the Border Patrol in 2023. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Peru. Oh, the tales of Peruvians hitchhiking their way to the US are as colorful as a llama parade. Imagine swapping the misty ruins of Machu Picchu for the bustling streets of New York City, where the closest thing to a mountain is a skyscraper. Why would they do this, you ask? For the dream, the American dream, where the streets are paved with opportunity and cheeseburgers. They come in search of jobs that don't involve herding alpacas. That's why they're coming here. Peruvians have always made their way to the U.S. border. In recent years, their numbers have increased. Poverty in politics is what's driving this increased migration. Following mass demonstrations and social unrests and political instability in Chile, Bolivia, and Ecuador in recent years, Peru is now suffering from deep political crises themselves. It all started after Congress removed the president, Pedro Castillo, on December 7th, 2022. After he decided to have a coup. It was a self-coup. He just tried to get rid of their Congress and anyone else that stood in the way of anything he had to do because they were obviously corrupt. At least that was his story, and he was sticking to it, along with that ridiculous hat he wears. The U.S. Border Patrol said that in 2023, they had 75,719 encounters from Peruvians. That is up from 2022 when they only had 50,622. Number 9, Haiti. Haitians come to America and search for opportunities bigger than the eye can see. Education that doesn't just open up the doors, but blast them off the hinges in their own country. They look for a lifestyle that promises everything from fast food on every corner to the freedom of debating whether pineapple really belongs on pizza. What do you think? Does it? Leave it in the comment section below. To Haitians, the United States is a land where dreams are made, or at least where you can make enough money to send a dazzling postcard home with a phrase like, right on the back of it, "Guess who had a burger with some fries last night?" Haitians have been migrating to the United States since the mid-20th century for many reasons, including political instability, persecution, economic crises, natural disasters, gang violence, poverty, insecurity, lack of economic opportunities, and then of course they had the assassination of the president back in July of 2021. That didn't really help things. Kind of led to a power vacuum. So they head to someplace in South America or Mexico and start working their way up north. In 2023, the Border Patrol had 76,130 Haitian encounters. That is up from 50,910 in 2022. Number 8, Nicaragua. Why do Nicaraguans make the big leap to Uncle Sam land, you ask? Well, I'll tell you one thing, if you're coming from one of the cities in Nicaragua, which there aren't many of, there's a lot of reasons. Rural part isn't that bad. You could literally live off the land there. I have. But if you live in the cities, it's a freaking nightmare. And it's not like as much the gangs and stuff like that. It's the politics. Living in a city in Nicaragua is like being on an economic roller coaster, dodging political dodgeballs and trying to keep yourself fed. You'd start looking for that dream of America too, the place that's supposedly paved with tents and opportunities. In recent years, hundreds of thousands of Nicaraguans have fled their country to the United States. According to a study, about half of Nicaragua's population want to leave their homeland for any place, not just the United States. So their president right now is Daniel Ortega. He was the president back in the 80s or 90s also, and he came back into power in 2007. Now, keep in mind, this man's a revolutionary. He was part of the Sandinista and all that. He was also in prison at one time and exiled to Cuba. But that didn't stop him. So he comes back in 2007, and he's been running the show ever since. And he's always been a wannabe dictator. He kind of is now. You know, he does all the things that a good dictator does, like wins elections by like 95% of the vote, appoints his wife his vice president. You know, he tried to eliminate their Congress and all that stuff. Most recently, he's been accused of letting anyone into the country. You don't even need a passport. Just come to Nicaragua if you plan on going to the United States. So he's not stopping anyone from making their way up to the United States. He's encouraging it. And this is in retaliation to the different embargoes we have on him. Now, the numbers on this video are just the Nicaraguans heading up there, but a lot of Chinese people will come through Nicaragua to go to the United States. Haitians too. Nicaragua actually dropped in the rankings here. In 2023, they had 99,496 U.S. Border Patrol encounters. In 2022, they had 163,876. Number 7, Ecuador. All right, let's say you're relaxing in Ecuador, enjoying the world's best bananas. Seriously, it's a big thing there. And suddenly you think, I need to go to Disneyland and see what this mouse is all about. People from Ecuador flock to the U.S. for a smorgasbord of reasons, blending the serious with the slightly odd. The Mickey Mouse thing, it's real. They surveyed a bunch of Ecuadorians that had come to the United States, and they asked them what they wanted to do and why they came to the United States. Number 3 was to visit Disney, behind work and poverty. Some of the other reasons they listed were education and healthcare. I looked it up. Their healthcare is very affordable, but it's not the best. In the last few years, there's been a jump in how many Ecuadorians showed up at the southern border. There's a few different reasons for that. The economic effects of the COVID-19 pandemic still linger in Ecuador, and that's driven a lot of people to the southern border of the United States. On top of that, they've got some right-wing policies in place right now that a lot of them are complaining about. They say the new policies have reversed the gains made under the former president, Rafael Correa. They're dealing with crime, inflation. It's kind of a nightmare. Most Ecuadorians that do show up, they're trying to make their way to New York. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol had 116,229 Ecuadorian encounters at the southern border. In 2022, there was only 24,060 encounters. Number 6, Cuba. Cubans do come through the southern border, but a lot of them we know show up on rafts and they get picked up by cruise ships. But a majority of the ones that are coming to the United States these days are coming through the southern border. They're part of the group that's been landing in Nicaragua and working their way up. Cubans make the leap from the land of cigars and salsa to the home of Taco Bell and Broadway for a buffet of reasons. All these food references, can you guys tell I've been fasting? It's not just about trading in the ration card for an all-you-can-eat freedom buffet here in the United States. It's about chasing the American dream, which, despite the rumors, hasn't been canceled completely yet. They're after better job opportunities that don't involve being a professional queue stander for the black market. They also like the fact that we don't have secret police here. Cubans have always been coming to the United States, even before the Cuban Missile Crisis and Fidel Castro and all that. Miami, during that time, had a pretty good-sized Cuban community. In 1980, Fidel Castro decided that any Cuban that didn't want to be there could leave. He was having all kinds of problems with the embargo that was going on there, and a bunch of them tried to take refuge on the grounds of the Peruvian embassy. Fidel Castro had enough, and he said, fine, you want to leave, go. So a bunch of Cubans in Miami kind of put together this flotilla of anything that floated, basically. And they went down to the Mariel Harbor, and they picked up Cubans. Over a 5-month period, 125,000 Cubans from the Mariel Harbor in Cuba landed in the United States. Eventually, their border got shut down again. Fidel Castro and whoever's in charge these days said no more. And so they're not supposed to leave the country. They still do. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol had 142,352 Cuban encounters. In 2022, it was a lot higher with just over 220,000. Number 5, Colombia. People from Colombia often head to the U.S. seeking a blend of better opportunity, safety, and the promise of a better life. It's not just about chasing higher salaries and the allure of the big city. Many are looking for a stable environment away from the political unrest and violence that has troubled parts of Colombia for decades. The U.S. offers a chance at a fresh start, with hopes of providing a safer and more secure future for their families. Colombia is nowhere near as bad as it was, let's say, in the 80s and the 90s. But it's still not great, and the opportunity in the United States are going to be a lot better. That's why they come. Most Colombians will end up in Florida or New York. In 2023, 159,536 Colombians had encounters with the U.S. Border Patrol. That's up from 2022 when it was 125,172. Number 4, Honduras. Honduras, just like so many other countries in Central America, they're just looking for a better life. Poverty's the real problem in Honduras. I was just there 3 weeks ago. Well, I was in Roatan, which is an island off the coast of Honduras, part of Honduras. Beautiful country, wonderful people. They just got some problems, and the biggest problem is poverty. According to a 2021 NPR article, more families are fleeing Honduras for the southern U.S. border than any other country due to hunger, violence, and catastrophic flooding. They're another country that really hasn't recovered well since the pandemic. I actually had a long conversation with some of the Hondurans when I was there 2 weeks ago, and they said that they're just behind on everything because of the pandemic. A lot of the country relied on tourism, and the tourism is just coming back to life right now in like late 2023, early 2024. I mean, but it's not like they just started coming up to the southern border 2 years ago. They've always have been. It's just picked up momentum over the last couple of years. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol had 213,868 encounters from people originating in Honduras. In 2022, almost the exact same number, 213,023 Hondurans. But like I'd said, during the pandemic and then they had all the flooding, in 2021, it was 319,000. Prior to that, they were always in the 150,000 area. Number 3, Guatemala. Probably about 15 years ago, my brother had a guy working on his house. He had come up from Guatemala just to work for about 2 years or so. He did construction type stuff. As soon as he made enough money, he went back. He wanted to open up a mechanic shop in Guatemala. We sat down and tried to figure out how much he was making here versus what it's worth there. And we figure in the 2 or 3 years that he had been working, he probably saved what would be about $300,000 to an American. That's the worth he was getting for what he made in the United States and took it back to Guatemala. Oddly enough, they didn't really see a lot of Guatemalans coming to the southern border till the 1960s. They've been migrating to the United States since then. According to the United States Agency for International Development, 77% of Guatemalans who intend to migrate do so in search of economic opportunities. Like other immigrant communities, they just move across the border to make some money. They're not making it where they come from. And they send a lot of their money back home to support their loved ones. When they come to the U.S., many Guatemalans settle in just a few major regions: New Jersey, New York, the Los Angeles area, and Oregon. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol had 220,085 encounters with Guatemalans at the southern border. And that's down from 2022 when it was 231,565. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I think it's obvious, but some people will need it explained to them. These are the ones that they encountered. This isn't saying that's all that made it to the border. I've seen different figures where they estimate that it's only half that they run into from every country, not just Guatemala. Others say they only encounter about a third of the people crossing the border. Either way, it's a lot. Number 2, Venezuela. Prior to 2010, Venezuelans really didn't show up too often at the southern border of the United States. Between 2010 and 2015, they would only have around 20,000 encounters every single year. Couple dictators later, and the Venezuelan fire hose got turned on. They're not just coming for the promise of a stable job or the luxury of a toilet paper aisle that looks like a cotton field harvest. They're also coming so they could have a little freedom to voice their opinions. I mean, you could do that in Venezuela, but a car might pull up and people will force you in, and then your family spends 10 years trying to figure out where you're at. So in the spirit of a good salsa dance, they step forward in hopes for a better life and catch their first 4th of July fireworks show. According to the CIA, more than 1 million Venezuelans have made their way to the United States since their past dictator Hugo Chavez was in power. They have a new one, Maduro. he's chasing people out of the country too. And they're leaving for the typical things that follow along with dictators: a repressive political system, lack of economic opportunities, steep inflation, a high crime rate, corruption, political persecution, and a collapse of public services. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol had 266,071 encounters that originated in Venezuela. In 2022, that number was 187,786. All right, before we get to number one, I thought I'd mention a couple of the countries that aren't in Central or South America that show up at our border. India is a big one with about 45,000 last year. China, about 26,000 last year. About 15,000 from Turkey and about 2,000 from Romania. We used to see about 4,000 or 5,000 Russians every year through the southern border. 2022 was 21,000. Last year was 43,000. All right, on to number one. And number one, Mexico. Surprise, surprise, Mexico made the list. Of course they did. They're right there. Everybody knows they're coming here for work, and sure, some people do come to smuggle things or whatever. This is no surprise to anyone, so I'm going to cut this one short. Besides, a lot of you check out of the video as soon as I say what the number one is on almost every single list. Here's the numbers. In 2023, the U.S. Border Patrol had 717,980 encounters originating in Mexico at the southern border. That's down from 2022 when it was 808,339. All right, that's today's video. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.